Terraformation, most of the people here have seen the name throughout the event, but maybe we start by saying what exactly Terraformation is, and then we'll get into the specifics of how you do it.
Sure. So Terraformation is a forestry company. We do specifically native reforestation all throughout the world. And I think one of the things that's unique about what we do is we really focus on community. We find local NGOs, startups in developing countries who have been cobbling together community-based financing, grant applications, and things like that. And we help them take that ambition and take that great work that they've been doing for 5, 10, 20 years and scale that up so that they can create a sustainable source of revenue and really contribute to the climate goals that we have.
So planting trees, not a new idea. And I think that there have been a couple of different ways of how to go about it, how to scale it. And I feel like there were mistakes that were made in sort of the first generation of just trying to plant trees and use that to solve our problem. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned in the process, or what the industry has learned about what works and what doesn't?
Yeah, people might remember, if you've been sort of following the tree space for a while, in 2018 to 2020, I can't remember exactly when, but everybody got really excited about this idea of let's plant 1 trillion trees, it's gonna be amazing. And while that is still really important and nature has a lot to add to our climate crisis, you have to, there's a little bit more to it. You have to be very intentional about where you plant the tree and what kind of tree. A great example being, I remember this story where the Icelandic Forest Service approached us, and they went to our website and they're like, this is exactly what we need. It was our Terraformation seed banks. These are these 40-foot shipping containers used for restoration all over the world, and they were like, that's what we need. And we had to really break it to them. And it's unfortunately, that's not really what you need, because trees go really slow in Iceland, it turns out. And even though they're planning to plant native species, the best place, if we want to grow a lot of trees and sequester a lot of carbon, the tropics, for instance, are a great place to do that. Trees grow significantly faster there. There are amazing co-benefits. There are people in these communities who know how to do agriculture and take care of the trees. So there's a lot of different reasons of why place matters and the type of tree matters. And you can't just blanket the world with trees.
So let's talk a little bit about, because I know you're particularly focused on the biodiversity of each individual region and thinking about it as more than just planting trees. Can you talk a little bit about the regional differences and then the differences in ecosystems?
Yeah, I would invite everybody here to take a walk through a forest plantation. If you've ever done that, you'll notice something a little bit different from maybe your average primary forest if you've been in one. You can look sideways and you'll just see a straight line of trees. That doesn't happen in nature, right? You don't hear any birds. You don't see any wildlife walking around. You don't see pigs rummaging through or squirrels running about. And that's just not how nature was designed to do it. And when you think about what's different about a native forest, there's a succession in which you do the planting. You have to start actually with the underbrush, then build your way up into the sort of mid-story, and then eventually create this overstory canopy. And in terms of carbon, everything in there is carbon, right? When you think about, planting trees and that being the core carbon, that's true. But ferns are carbon, grasses are carbon, the animals in there are carbon, and they help. Right, so birds that are inhabiting these native forests, they eat the fruits of these trees that are creating seeds, and they spread them around for you. How amazing is that? You don't have to go and hire people to go and plant, clonal seedlings anymore. You've got free labor flying around for you, spreading it in all these different hard-to-reach regions. So I think there are tons of benefits to it that just kind of go beyond, and most people don't think about that when they think about, back to your point about just trees. Let's plant a lot of trees.
So what is your process? Do you have seeds for all these different plants? Do you go in stages to build it level by level? Do you throw everything on the ground and see what grows and just leave it alone? How do you actually build an ecosystem?
Yeah, and I'll disclaimer, I'm not the ecologist on the team, but we have a team of ecologists who spend a lot of time thinking about how to do this the right way. And one of the things that's different about doing a native reforestation project is we don't start from clones. A clone being, take a spruce tree or something like that, right? You can cut off a branch of it, take that branch and then put it in the ground. You might have tried that with a basil plant or a rosemary plant or something at home. Or maybe you go to the store and you buy garlic scapes and you can cut off the tops and put that in. Those are all clones, which means there's no genetic diversity. If there's a disease that comes through that gene is very susceptible to, it'll wipe out the entire crop of it. And so what that means is we have to actually go out into the wild, find trees that are fruiting and that are creating seeds, collect those seeds, and then bring them back to the site and plant them. And when you're planning out a 5 or 10-year planting project, you need a lot of seeds. You need the ability to be able to bank those seeds because you have to time it with the different growing seasons, rainy seasons, and things like that. So there's a whole operation that goes into it. And the amount of planning that you have to put into it is immense. Some trees grow really fast, root really fast. Some trees grow really slow. And I was going through our nursery in Hawaii, and they're just like, that tree and this tree are the same size. That one's been here for 6 months, and this one's been here for 4 weeks. And here's our plan for how we plant that. And so when you think about all the planning that goes into a project, if you want to be planting a certain species, in year 2, you might have to be collecting that now, or you might have to be collecting that in 8 months from now.
So it is a multi-year process. It's
Absolutely.
not like you just come in, do it, and then walk away. There's an arc to it and a calendar you have to follow.
Absolutely. Our projects are 40-year projects at minimum, and just the upfront planning can take over a year, sometimes 2 years, and then the planting of that and the replanting of that can take a number more.
So what is a project you've done that you're particularly proud of that sort of serves as a model for what you can do?
Yeah, I've been geeking out about our Ghana project this week. It's absolutely amazing. Our head of forestry was just there a few weeks ago and sharing pictures and videos of these smiling faces of people in the community who are incredibly excited about this project. It's about 2,500 right at this initial phase of it, restoration project in Ghana. For the math in acres, that's about 5,000 acres in the U.S. It's really cool. We've gotten to know this team over a number of years. The operating partner in Ghana is an organization called Seawater Solutions. They are experts in halophytic crops and these types of experience. We've worked with them on a 20-hectare pilot back in the day, and this is a great example of knows the community very well, have been doing this work for a long time, and we just saw an opportunity to help them scale up. They're our first, one of our first carbon projects. So imagine starting from 20 hectares, community fundraising, and now being able to do, at full ambition, 10,000 hectares in that area. That'll be really neat. And the thing that's special about it, it's coastal restoration. There's a lot of co-benefits to that, but this is a fishing community, right? They don't necessarily particularly care about the trees. I know that's like a weird thing to say. What they care about is the thing that trees bring. And I think a lot of us do as well, right? Like we're not hugging trees every single day. We care about the fact that trees bring pure water and trees bring, nature and trees bring all these things for us. We're really beneficial in that way. And for this project in Ghana, the community is a fishing community, and they care about the fact that mangroves are these amazing desalinators. They naturally pull salt out of water. And for a fishing community, with these estuaries and rivers, that means more fish coming back to these rivers. That means more crabs and more shrimp that they can then farm. And that's a huge part of why they are super excited about this, because they see that future, right, where they can sort of revitalize this cultural heritage and this industry that used to be really important to them.
So it sounds fantastic, and you're using an indigenous, people who know the area, and you're not just parachuting in and saying this is what you plant. You're using local people to do the work and to make the choices.
That's right. They know so much more than we do in so many ways. The thing that we add to the conversation is maybe research. So, hey, these are the right species to plant in this area. In Ghana, it's these mangrove species. There's, I think on this project, 3 native mangrove species, but there's a lot of mangrove species out in the world. And we help them say, oh, these ones actually are invasive and these ones are native. These grasses are invasive and these ones are native, and help them sort of create this high quality project. There's a way to register these projects on Vera, which is a methodology standard. We take them through that process. We do a lot of the heavy lifting in that regard, and then we connect them with financing, right? Again, kind of our value add here is that we get to be on stage with everybody here and tell them about this great project and hopefully support that work through conversations that come afterward.
Yeah, so let's talk about the financing, because it sounds like a great project. I can't imagine the government of Ghana is underwriting it, or so how is it? How do you pay for these types of things?
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways we finance all of our projects. One of which is tree planting programs, so donations or individuals who say, hey, I'm flying my private jet around, or even if I'm just an individual, I want to offset my carbon footprint. We have programs for that. Projects like this one in Ghana, it's explicitly a carbon project on a registry, and for that, it's typically, at the end of the day, a corporation says, hey, these are my emissions, or this is the contribution I want to make to offset my emissions in some way, and then they buy verified offsets from the project. In the middle of that, are people who finance projects, and that can be, family offices, banks or institutions. World Bank, for instance, does work like this as well. Development banks. So there's a lot of players, I think, that come together to make these types of projects work.
Are there, what are the challenges? You've been doing this for a while. What are the challenges you're facing that you wish you could have wave a wand and fix? So what are the biggest blockers?
Oh man, how much time do we have? Let's see, I think that the financing challenge is still very difficult. I don't know if anybody has spent experience here doing development finance or financing projects in these developing countries. It's very tricky. It's very risky. Land title does not exist in Ghana in the same way it does in the United States. To the chagrin of our legal team, we're doing projects in tons of places. Colombia, the Philippines. You can imagine how challenging that is and how difficult it is for them to sort of keep up. And they always tell me, please don't go into another country. Yeah, I would say trying to bring in a corporation and a financing partner for a multi-million-dollar development project led by a community, right, who is great at what they do, but may not have a strong balance sheet or assets. They're not going to go in there and repo all the trees, right, if this project doesn't work out. And so getting them comfortable with that and really understanding the impact and the benefits that come from it and the potential financial upside for them, right, that's a key part of the conversations that I would love to fix. If anybody's got a solution for that, please come out and talk to me afterward.
In terms of going through the process and innovating, forestry we're going to cover again later on today, but forestry is traditionally a very old school business that's been focused on growing trees to extract their value. What you're doing is something very different. You're growing trees to create a different type of value. What technological innovations have you learned? What processes have you adopted that sort of operate under this new paradigm?
Yeah, we've tried a ton of things, Dan, and I would say not all of them have worked. We've tried to, I think, one of the lessons that we've learned is that we can't inject technology where it doesn't help.
So explain that. I think I know what you mean, but give an example of something that didn't work.
Okay, so I was in kind of embarrassing story, but I actually joined Terraformation initially as our head of product. Most of my background's been in tech. Joined, and they were like, "You're the tech guy. Go build us some more tech." And I joined, and we were at the time about to wrap up building this mobile app. And you would go around and you would take a picture of every single tree as you planted it. And it was a brilliant idea because main piece of the challenge with these projects is how do you create accountability? How do you create transparency? And so we thought, let's take a picture of every tree. Maybe we'll make a NFT. People were talking, every person I talked to was like, NF trees.
I think
it'd be amazing.
NF trees.
This was in 2020, right? So 2021. So
No, we know.
It was trendy. And then I was like, has anybody, let's go out into the field, let's test this. Let's actually use this in forestry. And I went out into the field on the first day of planting at one of our sites in Hawaii, Ohilani. And you're carrying bags, you are sweaty, you're getting rained on, you've got gloves on. Can you imagine trying to whip out a mobile app right after you finish sweating and planting this tree and be like, and now I'll take a picture with terrible service and all this stuff. So, and it was a great app. We tried to design for a lot of these challenges, but it really just did not fit. And at the end of the day, nobody was asking for it. We had to kill it. It was like my first 2 months on the job, and I was like, I know I'm here to build product, but I got to kill this one first. And so that was a little bit of a humbling experience. Since then, we've integrated a lot of tools that foresters are actually asking us for now. And some of the things that they tell us are like, hey, help me manage my seeds, right? Help me manage my inventory, and help me do that at sort of a higher level rather than an individual sort of, keeping me accountable. Let me keep myself accountable, and let me help me smooth out my operations. TerraWare we just launched this week, right ahead of Climate Week, and that's our platform for foresters. It's really, as far as I know, the only product known that I know of to be built for foresters, to help them do their work. And it's getting picked up by tons of organizations that we're not even aware of. Like we find new users all the time, and when we talk to them, they're like, "This is helping me manage my seed collection. I'm a seed banker." Or I'm a nursery manager in Australia or New Zealand or Africa.
So what are the features? Like what does it do for them?
So I was mentioning how we go out and collect native seeds. We have a mobile app, a repurposed version of that same one, believe it or not. And now we actually help people go out into the field and track where they are collecting native seeds. So you can go out and say, oh hey, here's this ali'i tree, and I'm going to go collect seeds from this tree. I'll mark where it is, so I know how to get back to it next time. My team knows how to find it next time. And then, over time, we can start making recommendations and say, this is when you should go next, right? Hey, this is when we think it's going to be fruiting. You deposit that into a seed bank. We have an inventory management system for those seed banks, so you know exactly how many ali'i seeds you have, when you're getting low, and when you need to go back out and collect more. And then once you take those out of the seed bank, they go into the nursery. And again, management there, right? So if I'm a nursery manager, I know, Here's how many plants I have at what different stages. What's my die-off rate? What's my germination rate for these different seeds? And what that does, it kind of eventually boils up to something that we can use as project managers or sort of accountable at the end of the day for these projects. Because now, instead of flying to Ghana and figuring out how many trees did they plant or are they on track to hit their goals, I can say, oh yeah, they're definitely going to hit their goals. Their seedlings have been in the nursery for this long. They're ready to plant next planting season. They have enough. This is their survival rate, et cetera. It gets us really comfortable, which means we can get corporations and investors really comfortable. But at the end of the day, it starts by building software that is helpful to them, primarily.
So obviously you've said one of the things holding you back is financing, something to pay for all of this. Assuming you have the financing, how confident are you that this is a solution that can scale, that can really sequester a ton of carbon, in addition to making those individual communities probably healthier and happier and wealthier? But how confident are you that this is a solution that can really scale?
Yeah, I would say it's at least my mental model of scale coming from the tech sector has in some ways gotten shattered by, we're in the world of atoms, we're no longer in the world of bits. At my last company, if we wanted to scale up the number of customers, the amount of revenue, we just put more coins in AWS and hire more salespeople, and it just scales on its own. In this case, every region that we go into is a little bit different, and these are people, right? These are their homes. It's really difficult to do that sort of copy and paste. I would say now we're starting to build a lot of infrastructure. We have this accelerator program that takes teams through in batch and sort of trains them. This is modeled after the Y Combinator accelerator in Silicon Valley. And so we are able to take a bunch of projects together, a bunch of teams in these local communities, and run them in batch, give them the tools and experience that they need in training, and then from there on continue to level up and work with them. But at the end of the day, there's probably always going to be 20% that's going to be a bit different. Every government regulation is going to be different. Every legal issue is going to be a little bit different. But I think with enough scale, that stuff becomes much easier to do.
And the output of actually sequestering the carbon, that's indisputable. This is a super effective way to store carbon.
Yeah, and I think coming into this room, if you had a bad impression of carbon credits coming into it, I wouldn't blame you. One of the beauties of our work is that. So first and foremost, we should protect forests. We should definitely not cut them down. A lot of the controversies around carbon credits have been targeted towards conservation projects, but it's 10 times more expensive to replant a forest than it is to just not cut it down in the first place. Our projects are reforestation projects, and we do a lot of work to make sure that there's no leakage. But essentially, we go into a barren wasteland or barren field, and we plant trees where they didn't exist before. So there's it's additional. You can just stand there and see it. When I go out into Ohilani, those trees are 9 or 10 feet tall, whereas before it used to be all cattle land. It was just grasses and flat. Yeah,
it's interesting. People don't think about Hawaii having barren land. You think of it being verdant and lush, but it also was transformed over the last 200 years.
There's a deep history of deforestation in Hawaii, and it runs really deep. My elementary school growing up was called Iliahi. It means it's a native sandalwood. And our first project site in Kapaloa used to be an Iliahi forest. This is an incredibly hard to grow tree. It needs other trees around it. It's hemiparasitic, it means it needs other species around it to help it grow. And if you go out there, you wouldn't even think a single tree grew out there. It's a Martian wasteland. Wind whipped, no water, cattle grazing and goats going by. They eat everything that they see. And we're starting to bring it back, and that's just really, for me personally, really exciting to see.
No, that's a great story. It's a great story. Jonathan Kim, let's give him a hand.